comic collecting pals. Welcome to another episode of People with Issues. Once again, this week, I have a great pleasure in having Mr. Akins as my guest. Mr. Akins has a superb YouTube video channel called What's on the Comic Rack. In amongst the sort of YouTube comics community, Mr. Akins known for his sense of fun. Well, he's known for two things. One is his sense of humor, his sense of fun. Some of the videos he makes, the videos on his channel are really great. They're informative, they're entertaining, really well put together. So actually videos he's made for other people's channels or in response to certain events are just hilarious. Fantastic sense of humour. And I was really looking forward to speaking to him. The second thing he's known for, if you're not familiar with him, is his obsession with John Byrne. Now, there was two ways to go with this episode. We were either not going to mention John Byrne at all, which could have been quite tricky, made for a short episode, or just have at it and get into it. Let's find out which way we went. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Somebody did say, Mr. Akins, it was me. You answered the call. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
I'm really good. Thanks so much for joining me. Been wanting to do this with you for ages. So this is maybe a slightly different episode because, as we know, Mr. Akins, you're a teacher by trade.
Yes.
And immediately, when we spoke about doing an episode, you started marking my homework immediately and saying, "I don't want to answer these questions everybody else asks. I want to ask some different questions." So it's not completely different, but one thing I will do is if you could just sort of very briefly summarize when did you start actually collecting comics?
When did I actually start collecting comics?
Mm.
Well, when I was a little kid, I mean, really, really young, I would get comic books and I would cut the pictures out of them and make little, standy action figures, with the paper. The moment I didn't cut up a comic book, I guess I would start saying I was collecting comics at that point. When I didn't cut up a comic book anymore. So I think that would be the moment. I'm trying to think of. I've got plenty of comic books where I have some of them that I cut the pictures out of them, and I still have them. I put them in bags. I don't know why, but they're like bagged and boarded, and I still have them. But the moment, whichever one that was, that I decided, hey, I don't want to cut this up. I think I may want to read this again later. Was the moment I started actually collecting comic books, and
So
it was really just to
what were
keep them
you
so I could read them again.
what were you doing with the pictures you were cutting out? What were they for?
Oh, we were, of course, I didn't have, well, back then, there were these action figures called, that was in the 70s. So we had Mego action figures, Spider-Man and
Yeah.
all those. So I had those, but, if I didn't have, I just had action figure. I was making them into little action figures and I would cut out the pictures. And of course, Iron Man's fighting the Hulk or, whatever picture. And that's one of my, it's one of the reasons I love corner boxes so much. A lot of times in the corner box, you got a full figure and they were all the same proportion. So you get a comic book with the Hulk, you get a comic book with Iron Man, and they were kind of the same proportion. You would cut the pictures out of the corner box. And so I used to have tons of books with the corner box cut out. What I did with a lot of those is I decoupaged a lot of my boxes since those were already cut up. I said, "Hey, I'm gonna kind of cut them up, take them out, and
Yeah.
decoupage a box, and that way, when I look at the box, it's got Iron Man all over the box. Well, that's where my Iron Man comic books are. Oh, this is where my Hulk comic books, because it's decoupaged with stuff I had as a kid that I had cut up. So that's what happened to most of them. But I do still have some that had been cut up that I've got.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I've to be honest, I did some of that as a kid, but it was not the US Marvel comics. It was the Marvel UK, the black and white
Mhm.
reprints. But it was because they put a coupon on the back of the book for 10% off, a chocolate bar or something or
Mhm.
something like that. And they went through a phase of doing one particular chocolate bar that, was my downfall. Um, and I'm glad if I still had those issues now, all of the backs of them would be flapping in the wind with this, but the coupon had been removed. But at least you did something creative with yours.
What was that chocolate bar?
It was it wasn't actually chocolate. It was called Caramac, and it was quite a thin, golden coloured caramel tasting. So it's probably just pure sugar. But yes, look after your teeth, kids.
We,
Um,
we, we won't go down the cake route like Comic Mike did. we'll,
yeah,
we'll stop it there.
so a complete subgenre we've got into there. So, what kind of things were you into when you started collecting or started getting into comics? Who were your big sort of characters?
Well, it's funny. The one I probably, as far as it was all Marvel, and it was because my brother had comic books, and of course, me having an older brother, he was 10 years older than I was. I would go into his room and he would have comic books. He collected comic books. You know, not a lot of comic books. He was primarily a baseball card collector. He had tons of baseball cards, but he had some comic books. And so the very first comic book I ever saw, and this isn't it because I had to get it later on because I'm sure I got my hands on it and cut it up, was this right here. This was the very first. Let me take it out of the bag because I hate glare. I'm one of these people that I just take it out because of the glare. Um, this one right here. And so the very first comic book I saw was some Jack Kirby art.
Yeah, wow.
And so I think this got me into like Fantastic Four. And then we would go to drugstores. Let's see which one this reprints. I think it's 82. This reprints Fantastic Four number 82.
Hmm.
And so Fantastic Four would be something I would start to look for because I love the Fantastic Four. Avengers were around. I'd always find Avengers comic books, Iron Man, Hulk, anything like that. It seemed the drugstores and the grocery stores where I would pick stuff up, they would have primarily Marvel. But one thing they didn't have, and this is 70s, one thing they didn't have was any X-Men. So that was one of the ones I wasn't into because I just didn't see any. I probably would be if I had seen any. Um, and then I was always gravitated toward Iron Man for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it was the aesthetics.
Hmm.
Maybe it was the fact that it was Iron Man and Captain America. Those seemed to be the two I was drawn toward. And maybe, like I said, it was the aesthetics. I mean, Captain America has a super cool uniform. Iron Man has a super cool uniform. I would say that it would be, now it would be, oh, they're both kind of self made men in a sense. Yeah, Captain America got injected with the super soldier formula, but he still had to train. Really at that time, the super soldier formula only stopped them from having fatigue. The
Yeah,
fatigue poisons would build up, and in a normal person, there's a limit to how much you can train. And
sure.
back then, the super soldier formula just stopped those fatigue poisons from building up, and you could just train as much as you wanted to and reach human potential. At the same time, Iron Man was kind of a smart guy. He created his own suit of armor, and so yes, now intellectually, I would hope that that was what I was thinking, that oh, if I train, I could become Captain America. Oh, if I'm smart, I could build a suit of armor like Iron Man. In fact, I don't think I've ever told this story. This is going to be a first one. Um, my dad had an auto parts store, and in the back of the store, we would get these big boxes. There was a lot of cardboard, and a lot of times, I would take the cardboard and I would make armor out of the cardboard. in the bag. I had this big thing, and I'd put the armor on, so and I'd pretend like I was Iron Man in the back of the store. And I know it would drive my dad crazy, but I would take all, I'd get a box cutter and I would get. He's like, "What happened to all this tape?" I'm like, "Oh, I taped up." Because I would tape it up to where I could fit it on me and stuff. So yeah,
I think that's. I mean, that's an awesome story to share. I think particularly knowing people like Up and Adam are going to be watching this, and somewhere down the line there's going to be a piece of art that's you in a cardboard outfit. I mean, I have to say, when you started that, and I thought, oh my god, your dad had an auto parts thing. I was going to see, did he actually build himself a suit of armor stuck in a tree or something? So when you went down the cardboard route, it was part relief and part disappointment. And here's the actual suit. That would
yes,
have been.
exactly.
But it's really interesting that a lot of the stuff you pulled out there is the detail of the character of the heroes that you were quite interested in.
Yeah, it's really only been recently that I would consider myself a collector. Within the past, since after COVID, I would really consider myself a collector. Back
Hmm.
then, it was all about reading the stuff.
Yeah.
And if I did buy a bag and a board, which I didn't know about bags and boards until probably the early 90s. I
Hmm.
didn't know that you could bag and, early 90s was the first time I ever found a comic book shop.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, you got these boxes you could put this in instead of me stacking them in stacks
Yeah.
on a shelf. And I'm like, oh, you could put them in bags and boards. And I wasn't thinking in my head that the bag and board is going to preserve the comic book. I thought it's easy to flip through this box with a bag and board instead of, having it loose and you don't know, you're kind of going through each, it just made it real easy to flip through a box. I'm like, hey, this is ingenious. I could put these in boxes and when I want to reread it, it's easy for me to flip through and put them in number order and that kind of thing.
That seems to be a similar theme for quite well, myself included, actually. But a couple of other guys I've spoken to, and sort of trying to think about that. What actually turns you from someone who amasses a pile of comic books and reads them into an actual collector. And a few people have sort of cited, well, when I first went into a comic book shop and there's like the organization of the books or the supplies you can get to actually look after them, or things like the Overstreet price guide and grading and things like that. But it was the same for me the first time I went into a decent sort of comic shop and saw this organization. I was just like, oh wow. But yeah, I think the comic shop thing, exposure to a comic shop and seeing the way stuff's organized and the supplies and things seems
Mhm.
to be a sort of a rite of passage for many of us.
I looked at it as a way like, ooh, I can. And I think I don't know. I watch a lot of comic book YouTube, and I know people have said, and I think it may have been Basement Comics that you used to have the footnotes. Something's happening in the book. It would tell you, well, if you want to know more about this, see this. See this issue. Go to this, or go. It's in Hulk, 284 that this happened. And I'm like, I looked at a comic shop. It's like, ooh, I can go back and read some of this stuff that I didn't get a chance to read. So if I'm reading something, I can go and buy some back issues of things and catch up on, hey,
Exactly.
what happened?
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, let's have a look at a comic. So, I tried to come up with some kind of slightly different questions for you. One of those was, can you show me a comic? Um, so, like, okay, let's get this out the way. John Byrne.
We've said it. I noticed that a lot of people have said it in your episodes, and I'm like, are they trolling me? Is that what it is? But I think a lot of those people did have John Byrne comics that influenced, that they loved when they were a kid, or at some point in time they picked up a John Byrne comic. It's pretty easy to pick up a John Byrne comic because he was so prolific. He did a lot of stuff. There for a while, he was doing 2 or 3 titles at a time, and his stuff is relatively cheap. You can find it because it was so prolific and so many copies were printed. If you want to find some John Byrne stuff, you can find it. But I'm always finding stuff that I had never knew existed. Every once in a while, I'm going through, a dollar bin, and I'm like, "This is John Byrne. I didn't realize he did the cover for this, or he didn't, did this kind of thing."
So, my question was, can you show me a comic that illustrates why John Byrne is the master?
Um,
I'm sure there
what?
must be a few to choose from.
Well, I'm gonna start off with one that people. I think this comic is his. You've got a lot of artists that are really great at drawing covers,
Yeah.
and you can go to, oh, well, this is a great Kirby cover, or this is a great Perez cover, or this is a great Alex Ross cover. And then
Uh-huh.
once you start comparing what's the greatest of these covers, I think that this cover is what people are going to think of as maybe John Byrne's greatest cover. It's Uncanny X-Men number 141 because
Okay.
of the story it tells. I mean, it tells a story, but John Byrne's also a marketer. He's going to make a cover there to where you're going to wait a minute. This character got slain. Hey, this character got apprehended. I got to pick this up and see what's going on in here. What is going on
Yeah.
in this comic book? And you can tell that it's probably a great cover because it's been homaged so many times.
Uh-huh.
The amount of times this cover has been homaged is, I don't know. I've lost count. I keep looking. I find more and more and more that have been homaged. So I think this is his best cover ever, but it's not my favorite cover by him, and it's not the one that I immediately once you gave me that question, I'm like, okay, what's my absolute favorite John Byrne cover, and what do I think of when I'm thinking of the artwork inside? Because all the X-Men titles wasn't just John Byrne.
Hmm.
This was John Byrne, Chris Claremont. It was a collaboration of them two. What
Yeah.
I'm going to show is just pure John Byrne. This is my absolute favorite John Byrne cover. And when I'm trying to think, I'm almost positive at this point I'm getting it through subscription.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so I get this in subscription, open it up, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know who this guy was. And I'm like, this is what is going on here. I love how the thing has been completely decimated. I love how Reed, he's just strung him out. The other two are completely gone.
Yeah.
They're out of the fight. I love this cover. There's a lot of detail in the cover. People will say that, well, there's a lot of white. There's not detail back in here, but as far as the destruction that's gone on, there's a lot of detail in that. At the time, he was doing a different corner box because I was always focused on a corner box. At this
Yeah.
time, he was doing a different character, a full shot and headshots in the corner box. So it was always neat. Well, what's going to be in the corner box this time?
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved this book. This is the original one. You can see it's all bent up. It's got a lot of tick marks because I've read it over and over and over again. But I love also his storytelling inside here and some of the detail inside. I mean, there's no reason to have nowadays a lot. There are white sometimes, but sometimes you can tell that, hey, this panel, I'm going to put a lot of detail back there in the back, and I love that detail.
Mm-hmm.
I think for certain things, this red right here, I can't remember what it. I know that the red is supposed to signify an emotional response that's going on. When you see the red in the back,
Yeah.
that there is an emotional response that's going on. So I love the detail in this comic book. Um, I love the detail right here. This is something a lot of times Jack Kirby actually did this, but same thing, did a cutaway of the Baxter Building, kind of telling you what's inside the Baxter Building.
Yeah.
But I love the detail he put in that. Um, I love his rendition of The Thing and Johnny Storm. I love this shot of Johnny Storm coming in, um, flying through the cityscape. The detail in this part with the cityscape,
Mhm.
it's absolutely. I just love the detail of this. So I love the build up on each one of these. so so this guy has taken out, and I didn't know who Gladiator was at the time. Gladiator has taken out the scrolls, and he's headed to Earth, and the Fantastic Four are getting prepared, and this fight sequence. Because when I was a kid, I absolutely loved fight sequences. That's what drew me to a comic book. I would pick up
Yeah.
a comic book, and I'm like, who's fighting who? And this one was one of the best choreographed fight scenes to me ever. So we got the cover. I'm like, this guy can't beat the Fantastic. Come on. And so you've got this scene where he comes down, Gladiator's like, he challenges, you know, everybody on the planet basically, and Thing's there ready to answer. I'm like, okay, let's see if you can take out the Thing. And so he picks up, throws a car at him, and this next scene right here is just so beautiful. Gladiator comes in and punches the Thing through like 7 cars. This diagonal is, you can almost see this as like a movie.
The
It's almost like a
perspective's
storyboard.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
And the Thing says, "I've never been punched this hard." I was like, "Whoa, this guy's serious." So as a kid, I'm thinking, "Wow, I've never seen a layout like this diagonal layout to create more space to show that he's been punched through that many cars." I guess if the advertisement wasn't right here, Byrne could have gone through and
Yeah.
gone across horizontally instead of diagonally. But that is a great use of space to show the action right there.
Mhm.
Um, so he's taken out the Thing. I think there's a lot of detail in these pages too.
There
There's
is.
a lot of Burn tech. You've got you've got Kirby tech. When Kirby draws kind of futuristic technology, you've got Perez tech, and you've got Burn tech. And there's a lot of like Burn tech, but there's also a lot of scenes as far as the background, the details of the buildings and stuff.
Mhm.
I just absolutely love it, and it's one of these things where it's a page turner. Look at the perspective on this one of him holding this building up, and you getting the perspective of how tall that building is.
Yeah.
I just, I'm not an artist, but I can appreciate good art, and I can kind of tell that he's creating this visual there of him picking up this building and how massive that building is by the perspective they're giving there.
Definitely one of and it's not so I'd remembered from my childhood, but from reading in older years, when I was back, and it was some Fantastic Four that Byrne did. I was reading, and that sense of and I said this recently about a book I was talking about in a sidebar episode, but if you took the dialogue away, you've still got a story. You can follow the story, and it was staggering for the amount of stuff he was doing to actually put as much detail in as he did.
But I think he started off really good on Superman. I really loved what he was doing. I loved how he revamped the character. Um, but quickly, from what I've read, that they weren't giving him as free a reign to do with Superman like he did with the
Yeah.
Fantastic Four, and he felt kind of like, well, you told me I could do this, and now you're coming back and telling me I can't. You're putting all these restrictions on me. I want to do this. Well, I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if we can do that. And he kind of like, if I can't do what I want to do, that's what you hired me to do.
Mm.
Then you can tell it in his work. And sometimes I can be that same way at work. If I'm really
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I'm getting stuff done. I feel like I'm doing really good. I can pour my heart and soul into it. But if I'm not doing it for the right reasons, or I'm not, getting the results, I can kind of get a little disheartened sometimes with what's
I,
going on.
yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, about the difference that I feel in how I approach my day job as opposed to making a video about comics. However, that's an aside, and if anyone from work is watching, I give my all, 100%, all of the time. Um, was that issue now? Was that issue 219,
This is 249, right
249?
before 250.
Beg your pardon. Oh, the question was a comic that illustrates why Byrne's the master. So we got kind of an example of Byrne, the story writer as well as artist. I think you said marketer, and one of your all-time favorites. We got a masterclass in dissecting a comic there. That was absolutely beautiful. No, I really like that because I think some of the best thing that comes out of some of these chats is when somebody really gets a hold of something. It's like, this is what matters to me. Let them
Yeah.
talk about it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's really, really cool. Um, okay. So coming away from a book for a moment, which might be safe, I asked you one of these bonkers hypothetical questions, and that was, which non-superpowered character would you like to be?
Um, that one was actually pretty easy. I would like to be Jarvis.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
Um, when you're a teacher, you kind of live your life in service. You're a servant in a sense. You're serving the public,
Mhm.
and I could fit that role very well. I could clean the mansion. I could cook, but then you get to hang out with all these cool people. You get to hang out with Thor. You get to hang out with Captain America. You get to hang out with some very attractive women like She-Hulk and Janet Van Dyne and Tigra. You get to hang out with all these people and cook for them. And for me, one of the things I love about YouTube is almost like another hobby. And before YouTube, I was a horrible cook. You would think being a math teacher, I could read directions. A lot of times recipes are put on an index card, and you go, oh well,
Yeah.
here's your grandmother's recipe for this, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm a visual learner, and
Mhm.
once YouTube came along, I'm like, oh, it's supposed to look like that at that point. Oh, that's when. And after YouTube came along, I started doing a lot of cooking, and I love cooking stuff for people. So yes, that's one of the things Jarvis does, handing mead to Thor, making good meals for them, and just getting to hang out with them and hear all their stories. I realize it's going to be dangerous with people coming into the mansion trying to blow things up,
I
but it's
seem,
still going to be fun hanging around these people and hearing
I
their
seem
stories.
to, I seem to recall he was pretty handy with an umbrella.
Yes.
But what I want anyone who's watching this, I want you to, take a moment to think back to reading those copies of the Avengers, or um, imagining that the voice of Jarvis, which kind of became the Vision in MCU,
Hmm.
and imagine that with Mister Akins' voice. Hey Wanda, you want me to fix you some eggs?
You want some biscuits and gravy? I'm making some biscuits and gravy. It put a whole new spin on Jarvis.
It's more like My Name Is Earl than the Avengers.
It's funny that you talk about accents, and for some reason, I watched the Superman movie, and Superman's adoptive mom, Martha, when she started talking, I'm like, where is she from? She sounds like she's from Loosedale, Mississippi. I mean, I thought she was supposed to be from Kansas
Is
because
she?
she's got a southern accent. I'm like, I guess she could have moved there. It just threw me because you have this vision of somebody, and then
Mhm.
they put it on the screen, and it becomes something completely different than what you had in your head. And when she started talking, I couldn't get over it. I kept thinking, where is she from?
See, I haven't seen that yet. Now, when I watch that, I'm just going to be waiting to hear.
Or to say something.
That's fantastic. Jarvis is a really good one. So that's good. So far, in asking that question, so far we've got one shout for Ben Urich and one shout for
Mhm.
Jarvis. It's two key characters, I think. Okay, so let's have a look at another book.
Okay.
This is that this. I'm really not sure about this question because when I started off, I felt quite good about it, but some of the things people have showed me, I'm still having therapy on. I asked you to show me a book that you reckon I probably won't have, but you think I should have.
Um, I don't know if you've got this book, but I love this book when I was a kid. Marvel and DC present the Uncanny X-Men. Let me take it out because I see glare already and it's bothering
Okay.
me. DC Comics presents the Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans.
Okay. And why? So straight off the bat, I don't have that.
Okay.
Um, pretty safe bet. If you put some DC in there, I'm not likely to have it unless it's a pretty old cover. But
Hmm.
I have to say, I like the colors in that. That's gorgeous.
It's
So,
it's it's also a wraparound. Look at that rendition of Darkseid.
yeah, that just looks like me in the morning. Um, so, why should I have that then?
I think this is the best. I think the George Perez
Hmm.
crossover was is really good, but I think this is ranked right up there with one of the best Marvel DC crossovers. I think a lot of times when they try to do a crossover, they get bogged down into the two universes are merged and then you spend 10, 15 pages talking about the merger and what's going on and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. This one started off like they've already the two universes are the two types of characters already exist, and
Okay.
they get right into the story.
Uh-huh.
And I love Walt Simonson. I think he's a great artist. It's Walt Simonson on pencils, Terry Austin, who I think is a wonderful inker,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's written by Chris Claremont, and I love Chris Claremont. He's a great writer, and I think this is, I think the way the characters are portrayed, he nailed them. Of course, he's going to nail the X Men, but I'm like, okay, is he going to be able to nail the New Teen Titans? And
Mhm.
because I was a New Teen Titans fan at this point, that was the only DC title I was reading, and he nailed them. I think everybody shines in this thing. Everybody gets a chance. The only character that may not get a full good treatment would be Wonder Girl. She's not really um, featured that much, but it's a pretty thick book. It's a nice read. It's a one shot, and I think it's a great advertisement for both sets of characters because they're portrayed so well, and it makes you want to know more about them. If you didn't already know anything about them, it will make you want to know more about. If you're not into the X Men, say you're a DC guy and you didn't know anything about the X Men, you pick this up, you're like, hey, these are some neat characters. And the same thing reversed with the new Teen Titans. Once you pick this up and read this, you're like, hey, I'm kind of interested in this.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think this is
Okay.
a really, really good read. And you don't have one of these.
I do not have that. So first up, you get full points for that. I don't have it, so that's points in the bag. No one can take them away from you. Um, Secondly, that's well. I mean, first of all, before anything, thank you for keeping us on safe ground because I've been shown some weird stuff,
you,
and
you
I
have.
and I and I appreciate that. And I have to say, you in I think various points in your videos or conversations, you've kind of sold me on trying Wolfman and Perez's run on Teen Titans, which is not something I've got any experience of. But if I'm tentatively dipping my toe into DC waters, Um,
And
I,
and my
did-
thing is, I'm kind of curious what your take's going to be on it, because I'm coming from a position of nostalgia about it. It's been
mhm,
a long time since I've read those.
yeah,
I recently, when I was a kid, there was only one other person that read comics, and he read DC, and I read Marvel.
mhm,
And recently, I acquired his collection. He gave it to me. It was out in the barn. I think
yeah,
you've
yeah,
probably seen that one video where I was kind of going through some of those. And he has his New Teen Titans, and there's a couple gaps in there.
mhm,
So I figured out what the gaps were. One of them was New Teen Titans #2, which is the first appearance of Deathstroke. That one's a little bit of money. So I said, okay, I'm going to buy that one. I got that one coming, and I got all the other ones coming that to fill in the gaps. And I'm about to reread it and see how it comes out as an adult. As a kid, I thought it was amazing, meaning it was just enough. I love a good supporting cast. I like the superpowered individuals, but like Jarvis, you've got to have a good supporting cast
yeah,
without it doesn't have powers. And I think they had a good supporting cast. It was a little soap opera, meaning, oh, whose relationship with the, that kind of thing. But as a kid, my mom would watch soap operas, and I was kind of, you know,
mhm,
when we would eat lunch in the summertime, the soap operas are on, and I was kind of watching that, and I kind of got that, interplay of, ooh, this character related to this, and it's got a lot of soap opera elements to it. So I'm kind of curious myself when I reread it,
yeah.
what I think of it as an adult now.
I think the sort of late 70s, early 80s. I think the X-Men did as well. I think that had sort of soap opera elements, and I was into it. I was like
Mhm.
fascinated with the sort of relationships between the different characters. Thought it was really interesting. So does that one shot precede the Wolfman Perez thing, or is that after it?
This is going on in 1982, so they knew about marketing, and this was at the height of the X-Men. It's at the height of the new Teen Titans, so they're basically taking their two primary books that are selling at the time, and let's put them together and let's make this. And I love the interaction with the villains. The villains are Darkseid and Phoenix.
Uh-huh.
um, and I think it's just a really 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 good book. I
Yeah.
may, since you don't
Well,
have a copy, I may have to send you a copy of it. I've got my LCS has another copy of it, I think, and I'm gonna go get you one. I'll send you one since you don't
all,
have this.
all of the times I've asked this question, and finally, that's not true. Mike from Portsmouth in England, when I asked him that question, produced the Fish Police, and he sent me a copy of it just around about Christmas, which is hilarious. But oh no, that's awesome. But no, that was good. I say above all else, I'm just relieved it's not after Adam from Up and Adam. Just
No, I was just going to give you a straightforward. I was like, hey, this is a good, and this will be a good introduction to the new Teen Titans, and then this will give you an idea whether or not, hey, do I want to go down the new Teen Titans route? Is it something I
I,
may want to be more interested in?
absolutely perfect. Right, full points. You win that. That's the best answer we've ever had on that question. So something we talked about earlier, and this is recently you've dropped a couple of videos about highlighting stuff from particular years, which is
Mhm.
absolutely brilliant. So one of the questions I'd put to you is, if you could pick a month in history to go back and visit the newsstand, when would it be?
Well, here's the thing. Um,
Touche.
it would be it would be June 1983,
Oh
and
yeah.
the way I envisioned this, I was like, oh, I'm in the role playing game, so I'm always trying to visualize what's going on with this situation. I'm like, okay, it's got to be within my lifetime, because I got this idea that I'm like, um, Quantum Leap. Do you remember the show Quantum Leap?
Yeah,
Where
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
you would jump into somebody's body, but I'm going to jump back into my body. And it's going to be June 1983. It's going to be a Saturday. And the reason it's going to be a Saturday is my dad would close early on Saturdays during the summer. That means my mom wasn't going fishing. So, what she may want to do on this day, which I hope that she would want to go do this, she would go to this used bookstore. And this used bookstore would he would have comics. And but what he would do with the comics is he would take a stapler and staple it right here so that you couldn't open up the comic book to look through it.
Really?
Yes. So I would love to go back June 1983 and see what he had, because this is one of them my mom got me. So she would pick up used books that she was going to read during the summer, and
Hmm.
she would let me pick up some comic books. And this would be one of the things I would love to do is pick up some. I would love to see what he has stapled together and see if there's just keys in there that he didn't. Maybe he knew what he was doing, maybe he didn't. But this is one of the ones I picked up because it's got staple holes right here, and I can tell which ones my mom bought me from that place and which ones don't because they have staple holes right here.
Yeah.
Plus, it would be a really great memory to relive to go with my mom and go to that bookstore and rummage through what he had. This is an example of one of them I picked up. Here's another example. This one's got staple holes right here. So I picked this up when I was a kid from there. Um, this one's got staple holes right there. This is another one I would have picked up. So that would have been stop number one. Like, oh, I would love to rummage through, see what he had, probably pick up some other stuff, and then we would go home and I would say, "Hey, mom, can I go?" Because we were living at the beach at that time, and I would love to go down to the drugstore. And what was on the rack in June 1983? I would have picked this up off the rack. Another John Byrne Alpha Flight
Yeah.
number two. That was in June of 1983. So I would have picked this up. Um, I would have picked this up. This is June 1983.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four number 258. This awesome Doom cover. I love John Byrne's portrayal of Doom. It made me fall in love with a villain.
Hmm.
Um, this would have been on the rack in June of 1983. Iron Man number 174. This was a period of time when Tony Stark had descended into the depths of alcoholism. He had lost his company. He was on the streets, and James Rhodes had to take over as Iron Man. And later on, I learned to love the character of James Rhodes. But at this time, I was always hoping that Tony Stark would get his act together and come
Yeah.
back as Iron Man. But I think Danny O'Neill, who had a I don't know if he had experience with alcoholism. He tried to do it in a different, Tony's alcohol. He completely deconstructed the character, and I usually don't like when somebody deconstructs a character, but it became such an integral part of the character later on that he's always battling. And it's not something that you just go, oh, I take a drink and then I have a lapse and then it's over with. This one, he completely deconstructed the character and saw that he had to come out of the depths of that and created another layer that really made me love the character of Tony Stark. So I would have picked up this one. Um, I would have picked up this one, which I did. A burn cover on a Marvel team up number 133. This is a weird pairing. If Comic Samurai is
Yeah.
another YouTuber, if he sees this, he's going to say, "I can't believe it. It's another Al Milgrom cover, and I'm not
Mhm.
sure who did the pencils, whether it was Al that did the pencils or Byrne that did the pencils, and one of the others did the inks on this. So that was a weird pairing there of Al Milgrom and John Byrne. Two more that would have been on the rack. In June of 1983, I had to pick these up. I love these things.
Mhm.
As a person that loved role playing games, I had to pick up something that had the stats of the characters, where they were from, their first appearance, how much they could lift, a little detail about their powers. So I definitely picked this up off the rack. And last but not least, instead of me having to borrow my friends, I could have picked up the New Teen Titans number 32. Yeah, this is 32 off the rack instead of having to borrow it from him and read
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So those, and so I would have, first off, I guess I would have rode. I probably could have walked to the. There was a convenience store. It was called Pick and Pay, and they had a spinner rack, and that's where I got most of my books during the summer.
Mhm.
But I definitely would have walked down to the beach because it would have been undeveloped at that time. Because now there's nothing but high-rise condos down there. I would have enjoyed the beach. Would have probably swam a little bit. I would have come back, gone to Pick and Pay, got these, gone back home, and spend the rest of the afternoon reading comic books from I got from that bookstore. I would have gotten her to pick up a lot. I think when he was selling these, I think they were a quarter a piece. So you get four for $1, the ones that he had stapled together. And I would have been really curious as to what else was in there because I had to just buy things strictly off the cover because I couldn't see the inside of it. Sometimes he would staple it like in three spaces. He would staple it in the middle and on either end. You couldn't open anything up to look on the inside. So
Do you not think that was just so kids wouldn't stand there reading them?
yeah, that's the reason he did it, so that people wouldn't just stand there and read the comic books.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think without exception, everyone I've spoken to doing an episode, I think it's something everybody loves is hearing someone recollect about, you know, going to a comic store or a drugstore or something they did as a child that involved getting comics and what have you. And everybody, regardless of how they, um, they might not have the skills to be a writer or what have you, but see, when everybody talks about that, they all articulate it beautifully because, and again, with you there, we're all on it, we're all picturing it, we can all see it, and it's the one most wonderful thing. I love hearing about this. That I mean, I didn't expect to get that much out of that question. But that's fabulous. And just off the back of it, I'll quickly highly recommend if anybody's not seen it to have a look at your not just your video about 1983, but I mean
Mm-hmm.
that's right off the back of what you've just told us. And if anybody's not seen that, get over to Mr. Akins' channel, subscribe, look for that video, which should just be within a week or two of this coming out. Um,
Yes.
uh, absolutely brilliant. I love that stuff.
And I think that was the reason I was able to answer it because I'd kind of gone back to look and okay, what came out in 1983,
Uh-huh.
and that's the reason I was like, ooh, here's a bunch of things, and I don't think any of these are in the video. I think I talked about completely different books than these right here. These were like alternates I could put in there. Now maybe the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, maybe that one. I probably talked about this one because this is one of my favorite books of all time because it introduced me to all types of characters. Then when a character would come out in a story, I'm finding them in this and reading about their powers and reading about all the where they came from and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So,
Yeah. I never saw those at the time. They weren't anything I ever saw appear on the rack where I lived. So but I think it's something I definitely if my pocket money or lunch money would have stretched to it, I'd have definitely picked those up as well. So the last question I had for you is if you were starting, so having been collecting all this time and having bought collections and stuff like that, if you were starting from scratch, what book would you buy first? And I gave you a limit of $200. Now, granted, you can muck around with grades all you like, but if you were starting over, starting from scratch, what are you getting first?
Well, here's another thing. I would have to go back to my favorite comic book of all time. The comic book, I remember the first comic book I bought with my own money. And that would, of course, be I've shown this and told this story over and over and over again. It would
Yeah.
be Avengers Annual number 10.
Uh huh.
This sucker has been read so many times. There's so many tick marks. I think the cover's about to fall off, but I remember riding my bike down to the store, looking through this, saw and it had a great fight scene in it, and there's a lot of choreo. It's got Michael Golden art. I love Michael Golden's artwork in this book, and I would probably, since I have to spend $200 on one book, I would probably buy the highest grade I could possibly buy. And since I now I need some kind of content for my YouTube channel, I would spend I'd get the highest grade I could possibly get, and then I'd crack it out on camera because I need content. But it would have to be this one. As you can see, I've got this one, but also got this. I don't probably can see it in the background there. I had this commissioned. This is
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
a reproduction of this. So what I did was I took this actual comic book
Hmm.
and I traced the boxes out and the word and the lettering. I did the lettering, and then I took it to Terrificon and had Michael Golden do the Iron Man in this box, and then Al Milgrom do the Captain America in this one. Then I went to Heroes Con and I had Al Milgrom do the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants,
Yeah.
and Michael Golden do Spider Woman, and then Michael Golden was at a local convention, and I had him finish this off down here at the bottom. So it's like a reimagining of that cover right there by Al Milgrom. Al Milgrom did the cover on this, and this is an Al Milgrom, Michael Golden
It's
mashup.
it's
So,
absolutely brilliant. And
so yeah, I would buy me another one of these. I love this. I love this one.
I wonder if a part of that as well. And again, it seems to be a common theme I've encountered in talking to collectors. When we talk about early books we picked up or books that made an impression on us, comics when we were younger, it's not uncommon for it's one, and it shows you kind of how important it was with the budget you had. But a lot of us went for ones where there was more pages, more characters, more in it, and it looked like you were getting, rather than a solo story with, Iron Man or Spider Man or something like that. It's like, well, forget this one. Everybody's in it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's more bang for your buck on this one. You're right. It was.
It's an excellent choice.
I can't say that there's not a little bit of burn on this. These are actually burn headshots on this.
Just, we had
I
to, didn't we?
can't get away from it.
I thought, I thought, we'll start. We'll get Burn into the conversation early on. We'll get
Yeah,
that out of your system, and then we'll move on. But no,
we'll move on.
absolutely brilliant. Well, listen, I think the some of the extraordinary detail and depth of characters and stuff you brought out the comics is absolutely a joy to listen to. And I love the way you look at and think about the books. It does all add up to a diagnosis of you definitely having issues, but
Yes,
we're extremely grateful that you've chosen to share them with us. So I want to say thank you for that.
you're welcome.
So
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoy these. I mean, a lot of times this is the reason I do YouTube is for these kind of things. I love talking with people about comic books. I love talking. It's like a psychiatric ward, I guess. People with other issues. We all get together and we get to talk about our issues with other people.
The big old self-help group, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Well, you and I will have a few more words after this. To everyone else, please make sure you pop into the comments. Say hi to Mr. Akins. If for some bizarre reason you've not encountered him before, do get over to his channel. There'll be a link to that in the description. Subscribe and just enjoy the content. Enjoy listening to him talk more about these comics. Mr. Akins, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you can see, we went for option 2. We got into the John Byrne thing, and I'm glad we did. I find any aspect of comic collecting, when you speak to a collector who's passionate about a character, a storyline, a writer, an artist, a title, whatever it is, when they get into it and start digging out the guts of just why they get into it, I find that endlessly fascinating and educational as well. It's interesting comparing my thoughts on John Byrne. My knowledge is a lot more limited than Mr. Akins. But sort of measuring up what my thoughts were against what he has to say, a lot of which were validated. There were some new things in there for me to look for. But one thing's for sure, what I love with these guys is, he picks up a comic book and he's talking about the comic book and he's showing you the comic book, and God, you want the comic book. You want to read it after that. You just want to share in what they're getting out of it. That was absolutely superb and I loved it. Please, if you're not already subscribed to Mr. Akins' channel, give him a visit. There'll be a link in the description. And say hi to him in the comments. Let us know what you think of the videos, as always. And remember, if you'd like to record your own episode, you don't have to have a big collection. You don't have to have a YouTube channel. You just have to love comics. The same passion as Mr. Akins does for his. And if you want to make an episode, just give me a shout. Thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, stay groovy.